What if a 24-year-old quarterback just walked into the most powerful office in football and flipped the script? Because that's exactly what rumors suggest just happened. Over the past few days, league insiders and online reports have been buzzing about a stunning development involving Shedeur Sanders and Jerry Jones. And if even half of it is true, the NFL might never negotiate contracts the same way again. According to reports circulating around league circles, Shedeur didn't just ask for a contract. He allegedly demanded one. A fully guaranteed $200 million deal, no performance loopholes, no escape clauses, no safety nets for the team, every dollar locked in from day one. Let that sink in. Most young quarterbacks are grateful just to secure their rookie extension. They smile for the cameras. They thank the organization. They talk about loyalty. But this situation feels different. This feels calculated, strategic, almost surgical. And it didn't stop at the money. Sources claim the demands included a full no-trade clause, total veto power, meaning if the team ever tried to move him, he could simply say no. Period. That kind of leverage is rare even for veteran Super Bowl champions. For a 24-year-old quarterback to allegedly request it, that's unheard of. But here, where things get even more intense. Reports also suggest Shedeur wants influence over the offensive system, a voice in coaching decisions, protection against being forced into schemes that don't fit his strengths, not control of the franchise, but enough power to ensure his prime years aren't wasted. And that's what makes this story so explosive. Because this isn't just about one contract. It's about power. It's about who really runs the league, billionaire owners or franchise quarterbacks. The meeting, reportedly held at Cowboys headquarters in Frisco, was expected to be routine. Jerry Jones pitching the global brand of the Dallas Cowboys, the prestige, the spotlight, the legacy. But instead of being sold on history, Shedeur allegedly walked in with his own terms already written. If true, that changes everything. If you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Browns are watching closely. Because if Dallas even considers this structure, it could send shockwaves through Cleveland's front office and across the entire league. Now, to be clear, much of this is still based on rumors and insider chatter. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but the reaction alone tells you how serious this is. Executives are split, analysts are divided, players are watching. Some call it bold, others call it reckless. But one thing is certain. If Shedeur Sanders really laid down these terms, he didn't just negotiate a contract. He challenged the system. And what happens next could decide whether this becomes the smartest power move in modern NFL history, or the biggest gamble of his career. It was supposed to be routine, quiet, controlled. Early May, a closed-door meeting at the headquarters of the Dallas Cowboys in Frisco, Texas. No cameras, no press conference, just Jerry Jones, a few front office executives, and the young quarterback everyone suddenly couldn't stop talking about, Shedeur Sanders. At least, that's what reports claim. Normally, these meetings follow a predictable script. The owner leans back, confident. The franchise history is presented. The championships, the brand value, the global exposure. For decades, players have walked into that building hopping to be chosen, hopping to wear the star, hopping to be part of something iconic. But insiders say this time felt different from the moment Shedeur walked in. There was no wide-eyed awe, no nervous energy, no sense of a young player trying to impress the most powerful owner in football. Instead, reports suggest he arrived calm, focused, prepared. And then came the moment that shifted the room. Instead of waiting for Jerry to finish his pitch, Shedeur allegedly placed a folder on the table. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just deliberately. Inside, according to sources, were his terms, structured, detailed, non-negotiable. That's when the temperature changed. Because this wasn't a conversation about potential. It wasn't a let's see what we can do. It was a framework, a blueprint, a line in the sand. Jerry Jones is known for controlling negotiations. He's built one of the most valuable sports empires in the world. He's handled Hall of Fame talent, mega contracts, franchise-altering trades, but insiders claim he hadn't seen anything quite like this from someone so early in their career. And here's what makes it more intense. Shedeur reportedly didn't raise his voice, didn't posture, didn't threaten. He simply outlined what it would take for him to commit his prime years to Dallas. Fully guaranteed structure, long-term security, structural protection. And beyond that, respect. Sources say the room went quiet as the details were reviewed. Front office executives exchanging glances, legal advisors mentally calculating risk, cap specialists already seeing the ripple effects. This wasn't just another quarterback discussion. It was a philosophical crossroads. Because if Dallas agreed to even part of these rumored demands, it would signal something massive, that the balance of power in the NFL is shifting, that elite quarterbacks are no longer just assets, they're partners. But that's where the tension truly set in. Reports claim the meeting stretched for hours. Questions were asked, scenarios explored, flexibility tested. Jerry, known for bold decisions, reportedly listened more than he spoke. And when it ended, no deal, no handshake announcement, no denial either. Just silence, which might be the loudest part of this entire story. Because if this meeting was just another negotiation, it would have leaked differently. It would have been framed as progress. Instead, what's coming out feels heavier, strategic, unfinished. And if even part of what happened in that room is accurate, then Frisco wasn't just the site of a meeting. It may have been the moment the quarterback market changed forever. The $200 million bombshell in 500 words. The number is what stopped everyone in their tracks. $200 million. Not a headline-friendly exaggeration, not a backloaded contract filled with technicalities. Reports suggest Shedeur Sanders is seeking $200 million fully guaranteed, every cent protected, every dollar secured the moment pen hits paper. And that's what makes this a bombshell. In the NFL, guarantees are rare air. Owners build contracts with layers of protection, injury clauses, performance triggers, offset language. It's how teams manage risk in a league where one snap can change everything. Even elite quarterbacks often settle for partial guarantees structured over time. But this would remove the safety net entirely. To understand how dramatic that is, look at recent history. Top rookie quarterbacks like Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence signed deals worth around the high $30 million range, fully guaranteed on their rookie contracts. Strong money, yes, but nowhere near $200 million, and certainly not structured with this level of control. If the reports are accurate, Shedeur isn't just asking to reset the market. He's attempting to shatter it. A fully guaranteed $200 million deal would mean that even in the worst-case scenario, injury, decline, roster shakeup, the team carries the financial weight. No escape route, no restructuring leverage. That kind of commitment forces a franchise to build everything around one player. And that's where the risk gets real. For a team like the Dallas Cowboys, whose brand value and expectations are sky-high every season, this wouldn't just be a football decision. It would be a business gamble of historic proportions. Because guarantees don't just affect the quarterback. They affect roster flexibility, free agency strategy, draft priorities, even coaching stability. One massive commitment can shape 5 years of organizational direction. But here's the part that's splitting opinion across the league. Supporters argue this is smart. Quarterbacks take the biggest hits. They carry the franchise pressure. They face career-altering injuries more than most positions. So why shouldn't they demand total protection if they're expected to deliver total results? Critics see it differently. They say fully guaranteed megadeals limit competitiveness. That football isn't structured like basketball, where shorter rosters make such risks manageable. They argue the NFL's physical nature makes this kind of guarantee almost reckless. And yet, the conversation isn't about whether the number is high. It's about whether the leverage exists. Reports claim Shedeur believes it does, that his value, brand power, and potential justify a demand that forces ownership to decide. Are you investing in a quarterback, or are you investing in the future of your franchise identity? Because $200 million, fully guaranteed, isn't just a salary. It's a declaration. It says the player is no longer negotiating from hope. He's negotiating from power. And if even one team agrees to that structure, the quarterback market won't just adjust. It will explode. The money was headline-grabbing. But the control, that's what truly stunned league insiders. Because according to reports and online chatter, Shedeur Sanders didn't just focus on financial guarantees. He allegedly asked for something even more rare in the NFL: structural power. And that's where things get controversial. Sources suggest one of the key demands was a full no-trade clause, not a limited version, not a preferred destinations list, a complete veto. If the team ever decided to move on, he would have the final word. No forcing him out. No surprise rebuild trade. No late-night call telling him to pack up. In a league where teams guard roster flexibility like gold, that kind of clause is almost sacred. Even star quarterbacks don't always get it. It shifts leverage entirely. Instead of the franchise controlling the timeline, the player does. And that's just the beginning. Reports also claim Shedeur wants influence over the offensive system, not play-calling authority, not sideline dominance, but input, a say in how the offense is structured, protection against being placed in schemes that don't maximize his strengths. That detail, more than anything, has divided executives. Traditionalists argue the locker room must have a clear hierarchy. Ownership hires the general manager. The general manager hires the coach. The coach installs the system. Players execute it. That's the order. That's how it's always been. But supporters of this rumored approach see it differently. They argue that if a franchise is investing $200 million and building its future around one quarterback, then aligning the system to that quarterback isn't radical, it's logical. Quarterbacks already influence offensive design behind the scenes. This would simply formalize that influence. And then there's the staffing angle. Reports suggest he wants a voice, not the final decision, but real consultation in offensive coordinator hires. A seat at the table when discussing scheme architects. For some executives, that crosses a line. For others, it signals maturity and long-term thinking. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Quarterbacks are often blamed when systems fail. When offenses struggle, fingers point at the QB first. Not always the coordinator. Not always the play design. So the logic behind wanting influence becomes clearer. If your career is tied to the structure, shouldn't you have a say in building it? Still, many around the league believe this would be a massive precedent. If a team like the Dallas Cowboys agreed to these rumored conditions, it could open the door for future franchise quarterbacks to request similar power. Not just money, not just protection, but involvement. If you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. And that's what makes this clause so explosive. Because it challenges the traditional balance of authority in the NFL. Owners are used to writing the rules. Coaches are used to setting the systems. But if these reports are even partially accurate, Shedeur isn't just negotiating a contract. He's negotiating influence. And in a league built on hierarchy, that might be the boldest demand of all. Before Dallas was ever in the picture, there was Cleveland. And according to reports and league whispers, that's where the real tension began. Shedeur Sanders didn't enter the NFL spotlight quietly. Expectations were sky-high. The pressure was immediate, and playing for the Cleveland Browns only amplified everything. A franchise desperate for stability at quarterback, a fan base starving for consistency, a front office under constant scrutiny. At first, the partnership looked promising. But insiders suggest cracks formed faster than anyone expected. There's been growing speculation online that Shedeur felt boxed in by the system. Reports claim he wasn't fully aligned with the offensive structure being built around him. Some analysts have hinted that the scheme didn't always highlight his strengths. Others say communication between coaching staff and quarterback wasn't as smooth as it appeared publicly. To be clear, no official statement has confirmed a breakdown. Much of this is based on sources, commentary, and reading between the lines. But in today's NFL, perception spreads fast, and perception shapes narratives. And that narrative says Cleveland may have lost trust first. There were moments last season where play-calling decisions drew criticism. Situations where fans questioned adjustments. Social media lit up after certain losses, with debates about whether Shedeur was being properly supported or simply expected to carry too much too soon. Then came the quiet tension. Reports suggest that behind closed doors, there were disagreements about direction, not explosive confrontations, not dramatic walkouts, just a growing sense that the long-term vision might not align. And if that's true, it explains a lot. Because when you look at the rumored demands now, full guarantees, no trade protection, influence over scheme, they start to feel less random and more strategic, almost like a response, like someone who experienced instability and decided it wouldn't happen again. One league executive, speaking anonymously in a radio interview, suggested that young quarterbacks are learning from past mistakes, not just their own, but others. While not naming Shedeur directly, many believe the comment pointed toward this exact situation. Supporters argue that if Cleveland struggled to create the right environment, then seeking structural protection elsewhere isn't arrogance. It's awareness. Critics see it differently. They argue that adversity is part of the league, that quarterbacks must adapt to systems, not demand systems adapt to them. That one tough stretch doesn't justify rewriting contractual norms. But here's the uncomfortable question, hovering over everything. If Cleveland truly had full confidence in the long-term partnership, why are these rumors even surfacing? Silence from the organization has only fueled speculation. No aggressive denials. No firm statements about building around him long-term, just careful language and controlled messaging. And in the NFL, silence can speak loudly. Whether the fallout in Cleveland is overstated or very real, it's clearly influencing the current situation. Because the rumored demands coming out of this saga don't sound like someone chasing attention. They sound like someone who doesn't want to relive a mistake. And if that's the case, Cleveland didn't just lose momentum. They may have triggered a movement. Long before the Dallas rumors exploded, the tension was quietly building in Cleveland. On the surface, everything looked stable. Shedeur Sanders was the young face of the franchise. The Cleveland Browns had invested heavily in the future. Press conferences were polished. Statements were optimistic. But beneath that public calm, reports suggest something wasn't clicking. And this is where the story turns. League chatter over the past year has hinted that Shedeur wasn't fully comfortable with how things were unfolding behind the scenes. Nothing dramatic, no public blow-ups, but insiders claim there were philosophical differences, especially when it came to offensive identity and long-term direction. Some analysts pointed out that the scheme at times didn't fully lean into his strengths. Others questioned whether the supporting pieces around him were truly built for his style of play. Online debates intensified after tough losses, with fans asking whether the system was limiting him rather than elevating him. To be clear, much of this remains speculation. The organization has never publicly admitted to friction. But in today's NFL, silence often fuels more questions than answers. Then came the subtle signals. Post-game interviews where answers felt measured. Body language moments that social media dissected frame by frame. Reports claiming that internal discussions about play calling and development plans weren't always aligned. None of it confirmed, all of it noticed. And when you fast forward to the rumored contract demands now, full guarantees, no trade protection, influence over offensive structure, they suddenly feel less outrageous and more calculated. Because if there was instability in Cleveland, even minor instability, It makes sense why a young quarterback would want structural security next time around. Think about it from his perspective. Quarterbacks take the blame first. When the offense stalls, it's on them. When wins don't stack up, it's their leadership questioned. Yet they often have limited say in the scheme, staffing, or roster moves that shape their performance. So if reports are accurate, Shedeur may simply be trying to avoid repeating an uncomfortable experience. One anonymous league agent recently commented that young quarterbacks are no longer willing to trust blindly. While not directly referencing this situation, many insiders believe it reflects the broader shift happening now. Still, critics push back hard. They argue adversity is part of growth, that every quarterback faces system changes, coaching turnover, and roster instability at some point. They say demanding control instead of adapting could create tension wherever he goes next. But here's the reality. If Cleveland and Shedeur were perfectly aligned long-term, these rumors wouldn't be this loud. The fact that trade chatter exists at all suggests something shifted. Maybe it was minor, maybe it was significant, but perception in the NFL moves markets. And whether the fallout was overblown or very real, it appears to have shaped what's happening now. Because this doesn't feel like a random power play. It feels like a response. And if that's true, Cleveland didn't just influence one contract negotiation. They may have unintentionally sparked a quarterback revolution. Now it all comes down to one man. Jerry Jones has built a reputation on bold moves, blockbuster trades, massive contracts, headline-grabbing decisions that keep the Dallas Cowboys at the center of the football universe. He's never been afraid of risk. In fact, he often embraces it. But this is different. Because if the reports surrounding Shedeur Sanders are even partially true, Jerry isn't just deciding whether to sign a quarterback. He's deciding whether to change how his franchise operates. A fully guaranteed $200 million commitment would reshape the Cowboys' financial future overnight. Cap flexibility would tighten. Every roster move over the next 5 years would orbit around one contract. One injury could become a long-term financial anchor. One down season could ignite league-wide criticism. Yet the upside is just as massive. If Shedeur becomes a superstar in Dallas, the brand value skyrockets. Jersey sales explode. Primetime games multiply. International markets expand even further. The Cowboys don't just get a quarterback, they get a centerpiece. And Jerry understands branding better than almost any owner in sports. That's what makes this decision so complicated. Say yes, and he empowers a new era of player leverage. Other quarterbacks will notice. Agents will reference this deal in negotiations. Owners across the league may privately resent it. The traditional power structure shifts, and Dallas becomes the team that opened the door. Say no, and he risks losing a potential franchise cornerstone. If Shedeur lands elsewhere and thrives, the narrative writes itself. Dallas hesitated. Dallas blinked. Dallas let the future walk away. There's also the locker room factor. How would veterans react to a 24-year-old arriving with unprecedented control? Would it inspire confidence or quietly create friction? Leadership dynamics matter in the NFL. Authority lines are delicate. Jerry has to consider more than just dollars. Then there's legacy. Jerry Jones has spent decades shaping the Cowboys' identity. He's not used to bending structure around a player's demands. Agreeing to these rumored conditions would signal evolution, maybe even humility. Refusing would reinforce tradition. And insiders say he's weighing it carefully. Reports suggest there was no immediate rejection after the meeting. No dramatic walkout, just deliberation. That silence is telling. Because if the demands were completely outrageous in his eyes, the door likely would have closed quickly. Instead, it remains slightly open. And that's what makes this moment historic. Jerry Jones isn't just choosing between risk and caution. He's choosing between maintaining control or redefining it. Because if he agrees, the Cowboys won't just sign a quarterback. They'll be endorsing a new power model in the NFL. And if he does, if you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. He better be absolutely certain he's not watching the next superstar build his empire somewhere else. If this deal happens, even close to what's being rumored, the shockwaves won't stop in Dallas. They'll hit every front office in the league. Because what Shedeur Sanders is reportedly asking for isn't just a contract structure. It's a blueprint. And once one blueprint works, others copy it fast. Think about how quarterback negotiations usually go. Teams hold leverage early. Rookie deals are slotted. Extensions are negotiated within market boundaries. Guarantees rise gradually. Power shifts slowly over time. But a fully guaranteed megadeal with structural control clauses, that skips evolution and jumps straight to revolution. If the Dallas Cowboys agreed to even 70% of these rumored demands, agents across the country would immediately adjust their strategy. The next young star coming off a breakout season wouldn't just ask for top-of-market money. He'd ask for protection, veto rights, influence. Owners would panic quietly. Because the NFL has always been built on organizational control. Contracts are structured to protect teams from the sport's brutal physical reality. Guaranteed money has limits for a reason. Once you remove those limits, risk multiplies. But here, the other side of the coin. Players are watching too. Franchise quarterbacks carry immense pressure. They face media scrutiny daily. They risk career-altering injuries every season. And historically, they've had less structural say than stars in other major sports leagues. If Shedeur secures even partial control over scheme alignment or staffing input, it signals that elite quarterbacks are no longer just employees. They're partners. That's a cultural shift. Some executives believe this moment feels similar to when guaranteed contracts became standard in the NBA. At first, owners resisted. Then one major deal changed the market. Soon, it became the expectation. The NFL has resisted that path for decades. But younger agents and executives reportedly see the writing on the wall. Quarterbacks are the face of billion-dollar brands. Television contracts revolve around them. International expansion markets around them. Protecting and empowering them isn't just emotional, it's business. Still, the resistance would be fierce. Small market teams might argue they can't survive under fully guaranteed megadeals. Conservative ownership groups would push back hard. The league office would quietly monitor cap implications and competitive balance concerns. And that's why this moment matters so much. Because even if this specific negotiation falls apart, the idea is already out there. The conversation has started. The possibility has been introduced. And once players realize the ceiling might be higher than they thought, they don't unsee it. So whether this ends in a record-setting agreement or a dramatic collapse, one thing is clear. The quarterback market is shifting. The old negotiation playbook is being questioned. And the next wave of stars won't walk into contract talks the same way again. All it takes is one deal to reset the entire league. And right now, everyone, waiting to see if this is that deal. So now we're left with one question that's bigger than the money, bigger than the meeting, and bigger than the headlines. Is this genius, or is it a massive gamble? If the rumors surrounding Shedeur Sanders are even partially accurate, then what we're witnessing isn't just a contract negotiation. It's a power play, a calculated move to redefine how franchise quarterbacks operate in the NFL. On one hand, it looks brilliant. He's young, he understands leverage. He knows the value of elite quarterbacks in today's game. Television deals are exploding. Team valuations are soaring. Owners are billionaires. Why shouldn't the most important position in sports demand ironclad security? From that perspective, asking for full guarantees, trade protection, and structural input isn't arrogance. It's strategy. If you're expected to carry the franchise, absorb the hits, and answer for every loss, why not secure the strongest possible foundation? Why gamble your prime years on promises when you can put protections in writing? Supporters say this is evolution. That the league has been shifting toward quarterback empowerment for years. That someone was eventually going to push the ceiling higher. Maybe this is simply the moment it happens. But there's another side. Because bold doesn't always mean wise. If teams view these rumored demands as extreme, it could quietly shrink options. Executives talk. Owners compare notes. No franchise wants to feel cornered or publicly challenged. If the perception becomes that Shedeur is difficult to negotiate with, that narrative could follow him. And perception in the NFL is powerful. There's also the locker room dynamic. Veterans who earned their influence over a decade might not immediately embrace a 24-year-old entering with unprecedented control. Chemistry matters. Leadership isn't just about contracts, it's about presence and trust. Then there's the ultimate risk. If the Dallas Cowboys or any team say no, what happens next? Does he double down, adjust, wait? The longer uncertainty lingers, the louder the speculation becomes. Yet even if this deal collapses, something has already changed. The conversation has shifted. Young quarterbacks across the league are watching closely. Agents are taking notes. Owners are calculating future scenarios. Whether this specific negotiation succeeds or fails, the idea of player-driven structural power is now out in the open. And that idea doesn't disappear. So maybe the real question is whether this works immediately. Maybe the real question is whether he's early. Because sometimes the first person to demand change looks unreasonable until the second and third follow. If this ends in a historic agreement, Shedeur becomes the face of a new era. If it backfires, critics will say he overplayed his hand. Either way, he's not playing small. And in a league built on controlled risk and quiet hierarchy, that alone makes this moment unforgettable.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.